Everybody, my name is Johnny Hutchinson, and I just finished reading the book textbook. So basically, in the ruling class and the ruling ideas, Marx and Engels, they argue that I'm sorry, I'm reading what I typed on my computer, so that's why I'm not looking at the camera. But in the ruling class and the ruling ideas, Marx and Engels argue that the prevailing ideas of a given historical time are formed by the ruling class and serve the ruling class. This is contrary to the apparent illusion that ideas and thoughts form and exist separate from the ruling class. The class which has the illusion that ideas and thoughts the class which has the means of material productions at its disposal consequently also control the means of mental production. So that the ideas of those who lack the means of mental production are on the whole subject of it. Attributing an independent existence of ideas to a specific epoch of time masks this reality. Marx and Engels argue that this illusion is achieved in three different ways. So, first, ideas are separated from those who rule by separating them from the empirical and material conditions in which they appear. Second, ideas are given a mystical connection by regarding them as self determined or appearing on their own. Third, these concepts are then personified in particular thinkers or philosophers. Thus, the illusion that philosophy and ideology manifest separate from the political is complete. Moreover, history itself becomes a vehicle for ideological deception. This essay is really important. I'm sorry, you guys, I'm kind of sick. This essay is very important in the fact that it's one of the first attempts to both identify ideology's presence in society and explain how it works to serve the ruling class. Marx and Engels exempt to flip the conventional thinking that ideas create society to say that those at the top of society create ideas to keep them there, naturalizing and legitimating their own rule. While history is one vehicle for dissemination, culture and media are also vital to this equation. For Marx and Engels, nothing exists independently or in a state of neutrality. Rather, they call us to examine how the general wisdom of ideas actually serve to propagate the domination of those who passively accept those ideas, believing them to be universal and serving their general interest. So, to what extent their observations are valid, both in their time and our own time, is difficult to determine. But if we apply their arguments to their philosophy, we must conclude that they are too not independent thinkers, but subject to some form of illusional ideology that serves a ruling class as well. Their insistence on all things material leaves no room for the existence of a human spiritual consciousness. Rather, this is simply another illusion designed to dominate. Finally, we must ask if understanding how ideology works actually helps our ability to resist it. Will all our interactive new media and social or political theory with all of our interactive new media and social or political theory, are we less victims of this? And if one holds to Marx and Engels' initial rationale, how could the answer to that question even be determined? Okay, so that was the first part. Now for the history of subaltern classes. Now, here, Antonio Gramsci calls for a detailed study to test his hypothesis that civil society is closely related to political society. Particularly, he wishes to study how resistant subaltern groups form while also swayed to maintain the dominant framework or ways of thinking. Again, you guys, I'm sorry I'm not looking at the camera because I'm reading the notes on my laptop. I forgot where I stopped at. I'm looking at the wrong part, that's why. Okay, so these groups are consequently incorporated into the dominant framework, giving the appearance of assent while at the same time reinforcing its own control. That was the first part, history of the subaltern classes. These are the summaries the notes that I took down. Now for the second part of this section, the concept of ideology. Here, Gramsci traces the meaning of the word from the science of ideas to the analysis of the origin of ideas to a specific system of ideas. The term ideology within Marxism, Gramsci argues, takes a negative value judgment because of its perceived relationship to the superstructure. If, as Marx and Engels argues, structures produce ideology, then no ideology will be effective to change the superstructure. It becomes useless, stupid, etc., as it says in the book. However, Gramsci argues that a distinctive should be made between those ideologies that are arbitrary and those that are historically organic. The historically organic ones are more useful because they create a greater organized response as opposed to individual movements, though even these, he admits, are not completely useless. Okay. Now for culture themes, ideological material. Here, Gramsci calls for a study of how material, media, press, and culture maintain this ideological front. Ouch, I hit myself. He foresees monumental results from such an investigation. By understanding the fortifications of the dominant class, one is equipped with better resources of resistance. Now, Gramsci's model appears to offer slightly more hope of resistance against ideological power than Marx and Engels provides. Hans Burtons defines Gramsci's view of hegemony as the domination of a set of ruling beliefs and values through consent rather than through coercive power. While culture is still employed as the ally of the ruling force, there becomes room for opposition as long as such opposition is framed or reincorporated within the hegemonic structure. Though perhaps baby steps, non-dominant classes do have efficacy. Under this model, and Gramsci's call for the further study, especially in Part 3, articulates the justification and purpose of what we now call cultural studies. To both see and understand how ideology works in culture for the purpose of countering its influences. But Gramsci still makes assumptions that are difficult to reconcile. For example, in Part 2, he states that one must distinguish between historically organic ideologies and ideologies that are arbitrary, but he gives little guidance as to how such a distinction can be drawn, especially by one who is still at the mercy of the ideological workings of culture. This also implies some innate sense of right and wrong that must somehow exist outside of ideology, and this seems counter to the idea that popular convictions is also a manipulation of the ruling class, at least to me. Within our context of new ideas and participation possibilities for resistance also seems to increase, but to what extent if all participants are also at the mercy of ideological power? Is this, truly counter or only enough of the appearance of dissent to satisfy? This is if we apply Gramsci to the question.